Good evening, or good afternoon, or good morning, depending on where you're at. I am Bob Mata, your host. This is Defense Diaries, and this is our weekly Q&A with my partner in crime on Murder on Songbird Road, who's a little bit late, but she's coming. So this is episode 6. We love this episode. And I'm not going to get into it too much before Lauren gets here, but this was one of those episodes where, you know, you hope going into looking into a case like this that you're going to be able to have the opportunity to speak with the victims' families. And, you know, you never know when you go into it whether or not that's going to be the case. You know, as you guys saw with me on the Delphi thing, you know, everybody was casting me as the villain from, like, you know, that one podcast, and, you know, that whole kind of crowd was trying to cast me as a villain, when in reality I was just trying to educate people as to how the process works and how that process was not working, and that there was a high likelihood that, see, it's my fault. I didn't send her a link. Hold on. I got to send her a link. Exactly. I thought about it too, like hours ago. You know, I should send Lauren a link. All right. I will remedy that right now. Crickets. Better watch it there, Mandy, before I throw your ass up on stage and make you talk. See how you like them apples. You like them apples? I got her number. All right. Sent. I'll let her know.
Do you like apples?
Bingo.
How do you like them apples?
It's a classic. So, you know, we were pretty deep into the investigation. You know, and Lauren was pretty diligent about reaching out to the family to see if they'd talk to us or see if they would engage in a conversation with us. And ultimately they did, which you guys were able to hear it. And it was just amazing. It was so amazing to be able to speak with them. And, you know, we wanted to really hear from them. It was important to us in terms of trying to round out a story. You know, to me, any story is incomplete without having all sides represented. So that was a huge get for us. What, she's saying she didn't get it? Hold on. Fresh. Can't use the old one. I think I actually can use. I'll try to invite her again. Email. Maybe I sent it to. Oh, there she is. Cameron is trying to teach Allison about Kendrick Lamar. and kind of like the backstory between the Kendrick Lamar and Drake beef, and giving her some J. Cole uh, lessons, and just kind of trying to catch Allie up to new school rap game, because Allie is very stuck in old school rap game, which I have to take full blame for. I definitely sucked her into the old school rap game with me. There she is. It was my fault. It was my fault. So I
What?
I had thought about sending it when I
Horizon.
created it. Look, man, it's all about tech wizardry over here.
Great. I'm like
Conspires.
banging on my keyboard with a sweat mustache. Like, I can't find it. So thanks. Thanks for that. Thanks for that.
You're always right on time. You are always right on time. So what's going on? What's good?
Not much.
Oh, wait,
Finished.
before you speak, let me introduce my fabulous co-host here, Lauren Bright Pacheco, the brains behind Murder on Songbird Road. How are you?
I just finished episode 10,
Ooh,
which was part of the reason why I was a red hot mess running down trying to find the link.
I like it. I like it. That is good news. Boy, you think we're going to be done in 11, huh?
No, I think
there's
that
no
we're
way.
going to be, we're going to be dropping in updates.
We got a huge update today. Huge.
But that's a spoiler. That's a huge spoiler. That's what that is. But we can give a hint. Which is that it looks like the legal machine is moving forward. How's that for a cryptic?
Indeed.
Cryptic
It's
link.
pretty cryptic. Pretty cryptic. It took, I'm just going to tell you, it took all of my willpower not to tweet out that particular bit of information that you so cryptically.
That doesn't surprise me, because actually, after we went back and forth with it, I almost said, don't tweet.
I mean, it would have been a good reminder, because I damn near forgot. I'd kind of been sleeping on my Twitter for the past 5 days since I was traveling. So I had a lot going on. There was a lot going on in the true crime world. So I was like churning stuff out. And that was obviously very much on my radar. So, but let's quit talking about it so as to not torture the kids out there listening to the pod. But big news for sure, that we're very optimistic about this development. So
very much so.
Yeah, keep your ears to the grindstone.
I also want to was reading through comments of the lives on YouTube, and there is a woman who was very informed, but also slightly indignant that we didn't update the status of Renee Hightower's access to her grandchildren. I think it's important to remind people that you and I have been doing this. Realized in kind of shock last night, a good year and a half. Like, this has been something that we've been doing for quite some time. And so we do call out when it's pertinent, when an episode was taped. Or when an interview was taped, because we are following the timeline of our investigation, not the real unfolding timeline, which we do also incorporate when it makes sense. So you will find out about real updates as we get them. And particularly going forward, once episode 11 is out, everything will just be pure updates.
Right. Yeah, it'll be straight up updates for sure. And I was like, before you jumped on, trying to kill time, I was, with episode 6, I was starting to get into just how important that particular episode was for us, because it was really signifying, that communication with the other side of the family that we so desperately wanted to have and were able to get. And it was such an important thing for both of us, because I was saying, you really can't tell a full story if you're not hearing from both both sides, so us being able to do that was huge for me in particular, because I was just coming out of the Delphi thing, like I
Mhm.
think that I had just gotten that verdict, and I had taken so much shit, just kind of being the harbinger of bad news in terms of what my view is, and that's all it is from the legal perspective of the process in that case. That I think that thing is on an absolute freight train right back to the trial court, and then I said it all the time. I'm like, that is a nightmare for the families. We talk about it all the time on our podcast. It's a nightmare. The concept of having to sit through a another 3-week trial and go through it all again, and just having the uncertainty of it and just all the feelings that come along with that is a nightmare. And it's like, and that's from the family side of it, the
Mhm.
victim's family side of it. That's not taking into account, you know, Kathy Allen, the wife in that case. So, it's like it was huge for us, being able to get them to sit down with us and talk. And it was awesome. It was awesome.
And I think that it's also, the way in which we're approaching the story and the reasons why we decided to tackle this one. Um, we went in knowing that this is a really sensitive field to navigate. This really is stepping on potential minefields of emotion and trauma for multiple families. Keep in mind, that Jade was the child of divorce. And so, it's you have a domino effect, really. And that's why it was so important, particularly for me, having handled other cases in which the other family flat out refused to revisit it. It was, I mean, it sounds cheesy, but it was such a gift. It was such a gift to sit down with Brenda and Bailey because they were really conscientious and thoughtful. And it really gave us a perspective of their experience. And, that is the ripple effect too of wrongful convictions because the families involved are navigating their day-to-day disruption and trauma. And so they are trusting that the investigation got it right, particularly the family of the victims. They are being told things. And perhaps if they do raise a question about evidence, it's dismissed or spun in such a way. And we definitely encountered issues that we had heard from other people, sentiments and thoughts that the family believed to be true that will be very interesting going forward to revisit. And again, that is not a criticism in any way, shape, or form of the family at all.
Right.
They only know what they were told in terms of the evidence and the investigation, and they took it at face value because why wouldn't you?
Right. Yeah. I mean, and when you look at this trial and you look at the transcript and you see what came in and you see how it was presented and you see what the state's theory was, which is the easiest theory to land on, frankly. That didn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that theory. And when you realize that theory was presented with zero resistance, it becomes very easy to see why everybody that was in that courtroom, including the jurors, felt that they had the right person. I mean, there was no one else to really point the finger at. There was no resistance to the evidence that was being presented in terms of probing it and asking the questions of evidence that didn't show up at the trial. It was, there was just a lot. And we told them that, we're like, look, I get it. I get why you think that she's guilty. I do. I really do. And, I mean, that is what you were shown. And when you have one side of it coming up unchecked, I mean, you're always going to win an argument. If I could have every argument without anybody on the other side, I'd win all my arguments. It would be glorious. Be just a great life. I just walk around winning arguments because nobody was rebutting anything I was saying. I'd be the smartest guy in the world.
The only time I want that, sincerely, is when I'm standing in the kitchen arguing with my husband. That's what I want. But other than that, I want to be. That's a great. I agree, Joe. I agree.
Yeah.
Mandy Joe. So, I also think it's important that people understand that was the first interview that we had with Brenda and Bailey.
Mhm.
And we did reach back out when we had the information that everyone's going to hear in 7, 8, 9, and 10.
Right.
And they remain just as gracious and just as thoughtful. And you called out something that I thought is really true and very interesting. Bailey she's so wise beyond her young years.
Mhm.
And they both expressed that if it does turn out to be that this was a wrongful conviction or that there is evidence that points elsewhere, they will be the first to say that they apologize. But as Bailey pointed out, there's no going back.
Right.
There is no going back.
No.
So you can't pretend that everything's just going to go back to normal. And that is the other really dark, sad side of all of this.
Yeah. Yeah.
There is no
It's
happy ending.
Yeah, there's no just kidding. Just
Yeah.
kidding. That's and we're talking about a family that, even though Julie and Mike never married, and I don't know that they would ever reconcile. I mean, who knows? You never know. But the fact of the matter is that, there's going to always be that fact that exists in the world that, this event happened. And I'm talking in the scenario where Julia walks out of prison and either because, she's tried again and they find her not guilty, or if the state has different thoughts about how to proceed on this thing, whatever the case may be. But if there's that day when she walks out and she's free and she's able to be with her family again.
But into what?
Into
Into the arms of 3 of her 4 children who
don't know her.
don't know her.
Right.
They have been separated for much more than half of these children's lives. Her
Yep.
eldest is 7, the second youngest is 5, and her son Thomas she held for an hour after giving birth before he was ripped out of her arms. And so there is going to be, how do you heal that? How do you, so there are many questions that we'll have to tackle going forward. But Cyber Chicken Boston. So yes, the first 6 episodes are out. The 7th right now will be out next Thursday. So it doesn't require a subscription unless you want early access to it. And that is on something called Apple True Crime Plus. And it's a subscription that you get through Apple. I cannot tell you exactly how it works because I don't have it. So I do know that you do get access a week early.
You do. So you get and luckily Lauren's doing the work so that we have an episode to drop early. Because y'all know if it was me, not only would you not be getting shit early, you'd be still waiting for the next episode.
Yeah, but then there would be another 300 episodes because I might
True.
be more
True.
deadline driven, but you're more prolific.
True. So, all right, we've got a couple of more comments than I'd say questions. I like this one by Free Radical. It's interesting. I've listened to all the episodes. I hate to say this, but I still don't feel I have a good sense of why she's not guilty.
Do not hate to say anything.
Yeah.
Really. You know, if this were something that you listened to the first episode and you thought our minds were made up or we were spoon feeding you what you should think, it would not be a compelling listen. And as I've said multiple times, we have talked each other off the fence or back to the other side of the fence a zillion times since this process began. But Free Radical, I promise you that 7, 8, and 9 really dives deeply now into the schism that you hear very clearly in episode 6. You will understand exactly why the family of Michael Beasley was convinced that she was guilty, but you're going to go through our tackling of the trial transcripts, of the interrogation footage, of the DNA collection, of issues with the autopsy and the timeline, all of that. So promise me that you will come back in 3 weeks and tell us where you stand at that point. Um, there are many ways to digest what you're about to experience with the podcast over the next 3 weeks. But even if you don't have a clear sense of whether or not she is innocent or guilty, you will have no doubt as to whether or not she had a fair trial.
Right. Yeah. And it's interesting because, as we build up through the podcast, we really still haven't dug into our investigation yet. We've really kind of like told the story from all sides. You've gotten obviously Renee, and Julia's family, and we've heard from some town folk and we've heard from some of the reporters that covered it. So we're kind of like building the entire picture of everything that was going on that was circling this case. And really the next 3 episodes is where we start getting into the nitty gritty in terms of what we're able to dig up. And it's interesting. And the question is always going to become, because if you sit here right now, having heard what you've heard, and you're of the mindset that the bad facts that we've discussed, if those are so compelling to you that there's nothing that would really ever change your mind, then nothing's going to change your mind short of them testing some DNA under somebody's fingernail and finding out that it's somebody else who had no business being in that house, and they're able to track that person down and they make an arrest. I mean, short of that,
I beg to differ. I think that your savvy community of Defense Diaries listeners will absolutely have red flags, because if she was guilty, the stuff that was pulled would not have been pulled.
Sorry, I was saying goodbye to my. I love you too. All right, be
Aw.
safe. Aw.
Now,
That's my big one.
there was a comment before that said that you could have a conversation with a mime because you gesticulate so much.
Me?
Yeah.
Me? What are you talking about?
It's
I don't
really
even know
true.
what you mean.
It's really true. It's
I am
funny.
like a statue.
One of the first things that I said, yeah, here it is. And Meg, I so agree. One of the first things I told my husband about Bob was, it's funny because my husband, I like to say, if you chopped off his hands, he couldn't communicate at all. He gesticulates so much. And I saw that similarity with Bob when we first met.
Yeah, I'm definitely a hand talker. It's and when you're trying cases, they always would tell you in trial advocacy classes, try to, if you can, if you're able to, try to keep that to a minimum because jurors will find it very distracting that you talk with your hands. And I'm like, listen, man, not fucking happening, bro. So I talk with my hands. There's just not like you literally
Very difficult for you not to gesticulate or cuss.
very hard for either of those things not to happen because I
Luckily, you
love
can
this.
curse with your hands too. So that's,
Exactly. Hey,
one size,
I
one
spent a
size
career
fits
in
all.
front of judges never cursing, so now I just let my freak flag fly. I mean that's how I is. So all right, so yeah, I agree. Look, I mean, I think that a critical thinking group of people, which my community definitely is, that will certainly uh have red flags raised. There's no question about that. And like it's one of those cases where, again, when I was trying to figure out how to explain it to people, when I was like kind of telling my friends what it's giving them a rough idea of what I was doing, I was like, well, like the best way to describe this case is that you've got these two just competing impossible things, and one of them had to have happened. It's like either she did this, which to me is completely implausible, just completely. Like there is no way that she just lost her shit and snapped and did this. There's just there is a build up to that, or there is medication that you're on, or there is some kind of mental illness. There is always a reason,
Mm.
and none of those things exist. None of them.
Or
People don't
meth,
go
meth,
from zero, right? Right. I
which
mean,
which
people.
we have been told multiple times by multiple people that
Yeah,
they
that's
thought
right.
that it was involved.
You just
You
don't
know,
go from zero to murder. You just don't
but
do it. It doesn't
I
happen.
will also say, if this were a slam dunk, 100% guilty, look no further, we have our gal case. The stuff that was pulled, which will roll out in a snowball effect over the next 3 episodes, that wouldn't have happened. And, we had to fight to get all of the, dis d elements of the discovery that we have. There have been things that inexplicably they will not budge on, and that's also part of the problem as well. But, I think that when people understand what was and what was not tested, when they see the Hux video, they will have really huge questions about the prosecution's case, but also the lack of a proper defense. And so all of those things played in to this perfect storm.
Yeah. It's just one of those cases where when you're looking at it and when it's all said and done and they've got a conviction in the books, and then you have individuals out there that want to take a peek, and there's a couple cases out there right now, this one, the other one that I was covering pretty heavily. I want to see police reports. I have a right to them.
Mhm.
It's FOIA exists for a reason. You got your conviction. What the hell are you hiding?
Yeah,
Release the document. So, I mean, to me, for you as being as diligent as you have been trying to secure police reports for us to be able to examine, and for them to be as shifty as they've been in releasing what little that they have, is a huge red flag for me. I mean, if you stand by your conviction, turn the shit over. If you stand by your investigation, turn it over.
Mhm.
Let us take a peek at it. There's nothing to hide.
Well, the most telling thing for me, which was, all right, all gloves are off. When I was trying to track down the alleged court order that the Williamson County nurse said she had, that the judge signed off on it, I had to go to Williamson County. I had to go to Marion City's attorney. I went to the special prosecutor. 2 places sent me 2 things. One was a temporary custody ruling. Neither one had anything to do with the birth protocol and the instant removal of the infant upon the cutting of the umbilical cord. Now, you layer that with the fact that they sent it to me, the wrong thing, saying, "Here you go. That's it." No, that's not it. And guess what else? They were supposed to have kept by law detailed minute to minute record of every single time Beverly, while pregnant, was put in full shackles. Postpartum, too. And guess what? They've never sent. So when you have a power system that is operating, thinking that it is not beholden to protocol or accountability, that's a red flag.
Big
And
time.
that's something that we've seen again and again and again. But the first time I realized, holy crap, they don't think they have to answer to anyone, was with the court order that apparently dictated they rip that baby out of her arms the second the umbilical cord was cut. Doesn't exist.
No, I know. And I mean, it's par for the course though, right? I mean, like that, we're not surprised in terms of everything that's gone on with this case. I mean, it's, there's that saying, pressure creates diamonds, and, they're feeling it. And it's going to hopefully get more intense as the weeks progress.
Have you gotten any strange DMs?
I always get strange DMs. People,
I-
people live in my DMs, and there's a lot of strange ones.
I'm getting a lot. I'm getting a lot of them.
Yeah, a lot of strange DMs. Relating to all kinds of, like, a lot of them. And I've got so many places that people can hit me up, whether it be on Facebook Messenger, or whether it's Instagram Messenger, or whether it's Twitter DMs or X DMs, whatever you want to call it, whether it's here. This is probably emails. Yeah, I get I haven't gotten anything bizarre relating to murder on Songbird Road. Nothing bizarre.
Great. So I'm the bizarre magnet.
Yeah. Well,
At least I share it with you, so you live vicariously.
That's your vibe. That's your vibe.
Yeah. But okay, so this question: who is poisoning the family with bad info? That's a very complicated question, because keep in mind, just the same way, if you go to a doctor's office and you get a diagnosis you don't agree with or you don't want, you do have the freedom to get a second opinion. But when you are dealing with a investigation and you're being told, this is who the evidence led to, this is what we have, and it's being spun in such a way that it's definitive. They're not saying, we think she did it, but we're gonna spend all of our time making sure we got this right, because we don't want to subject your family to the additional trauma of having to revisit this in 4 years.
Right.
That's not what happens when it's a 4-day investigation.
No, it can't.
It can't.
I mean, there is no ability to be thorough in that short period of time. And, but I mean, the short answer to that is that it's law enforcement, and then the prosecutor after law enforcement. Like when they land on somebody and they go to the families or the family in this case, and they're telling them, look, we've made an arrest. This is who it is. And you get the trust us, because they're not going to divulge.
Reeling with guilt.
Right.
Your whole world and reality has been upended.
Right.
And in a world where you're being told that this tiny little woman who has no history of violence, who apparently is the go-to person at any family function, wedding, for watching everybody else's kids, that she is a cold-blooded, ruthless, deranged killer.
Sociopath. Right. And again, you couple that in this case with 4 days had passed. So there is no, they're still in the deep throes of the trauma of what has just happened when they're provided with that information as to who they are arresting. And believe me when I tell you this, and I'm sure if we've got any folks in here that have been unfortunate enough to have been involved one way or another on some side of a crime, what you learn very quickly is that the victims' families are told next to nothing in terms of what evidence they have and why they think the way that they think. It's that, trust me, that you just have to trust us. We can't divulge the investigation. It's still ongoing. You'll have to wait till trial, but just trust us. We got the right person here. So they sit in the dark and they don't know, and they hope and they put all their faith in the law enforcement. And then again, the prosecutor that follows law enforcement, once that attorney is saying, okay, I'm going to try this case and I'm going to get you a conviction on it. We got the right person. And they sit there.
Gonna get a win.
We're going to get a win. And then
we're going to win.
And then that leads up to a trial if you don't have a plea. And in this case, a plea was never going to ever happen, because Julia, from the minute that she was in contact with law enforcement up until and throughout the trial, through the sentencing until now, has always maintained her innocence, always, unequivocally.
I will say this. I have covered a lot of wrongful convictions. I've interviewed a ton of people, as have you, who have been wrongfully convicted. I would say 97%, if not more of them, thought that there is no way that you could be found guilty of a crime you didn't commit.
It's crazy.
Now, Cyber Chicken Boston, you didn't hear a motive because the state never offered one. And that's why when we spoke to the family, we talked about something last week, which is, or Monday. When did we last? No, Friday we did this. Retroactive bias. I think when one is not given, or retrospective bias, I should say, when one isn't given a motive, it is kind of easy to look in the rear view mirror, which gets a little bit of haze on it, and read into someone's actions or motives. And yes, they have settled upon the fact that they believe Julie Beverly was jealous because Jade was loved and came from another relationship. And that falls apart a bit under scrutiny when you look at the fact that she had raised this girl as one of her own by all viewpoints. You can look at her social. She put side by side photos of her son, Jaden, who is the same age as Jade, their school photos every single year without any kind of separation or without any kind of difference in framing them. And they had ultimately 3 more children together. So that jealous, evil stepmother doesn't translate into reality.
Yeah, it doesn't hold water.
Yeah, from
And
any
we
of
talked
these
about this, I think, on Friday too, in the sense that, like, once, like Allie had our 2 oldest prior to us getting married, so we were a blended family, and then Allie and I had our kids together, and it's like once you have that kind of connective tissue with siblings, like becoming blood siblings, it changes the whole dynamic of everything, really, just in the minds of the kids. It's kind of a weird thing. It didn't have any impact on me. I loved all my kids the same the whole way through, but I think for the kids, the older kids, I think it strengthened their connection to me. You know what I mean? Because now there is like this shared blood component, this genetic component that they all share. You know what I'm saying? So it does, and that existed here. So this kind of, and the evil stepmother thing just doesn't. That's not who Julie is.
No,
Just
and
not who she is.
you'll hear in an upcoming episode a really touching interview that we did with Jaden, Julie's eldest son, who is now a freshman in high school, and the weight of the world on his slender shoulders. But Jade was a best friend. So now you add that layer of a mother who knows their child's social circle, and this was Jade and Jaden were brother and sister, but great friends upon that. And that makes it even more nonsensical
Right.
that she would have, taken the life of somebody that by all viewpoints she cared deeply for, but also, her children loved.
Yeah, which leads us into this question. It's again more of kind of a statement, this case. But thanks for caring about my opinion. I'll let you know as it gets updated on evidence. I don't understand why she waited so long to call 911, though. That's a big issue.
It is, Lisa, and unfortunately, that timeline was not challenged. One of the things, and Bob and I have had this conversation many times. The first thing he does, and you can take this. The first thing he does as a defense attorney is he attacks the prosecution's timeline, because it's during that timeline that they have basically fit all of their evidence to create the seamless narrative. And we've pressed Julie on this. We've pressed her, and she does not know where that time could have gone. But we do not know if that lapse of time is truly real.
Right.
We don't.
We just don't.
They have
Yeah.
cell phone pings. The Hux footage is apparently 15 minutes off. The second footage that they got from a neighbor, I won't spoil it as to his connection with the investigation, or his wife's connection with the investigation, but that's conveniently 44 minutes off to sync with the Hux footage, which syncs with the cell phone. So we don't really know.
Right.
There
And
are ways that we could test the timeline with electronics. We'll get into that.
yeah, that's a real, that one really sticks in my craw. But
It does.
that's a spoiler alert. So, and again, like when you look at this case, and I would just ask all of you out there that are kind of listening to it, just take out the bad facts. I mean, we know they exist,
Mhm.
but peel them away for just a second and think about the evidence, because bad facts are not evidence. The fact that she took however long it took her to call 911 isn't evidence per se that she committed the crime. Okay. The fact that she lied about where she went isn't evidence per se that she committed the crime. It's not evidence that directly links her to committing the crime. So when you pull away kind of these bad facts and you're left with what evidence do they have that she actually committed the crime, I think that you're only left with this bite mark, and where they claim that they found Jade's DNA on it, right? I mean, that's all that exists. So beyond that, I don't know that there's anything else out there.
And once we get into the interrogation footage and the DNA collection, you're going to question whether or not that was such a slam dunk.
Right.
So yeah, as I said, after episode 5, the wheels come off, because at that point we are really in a very methodical way going through all of the prosecution's evidence but also the way in which it was framed and presented in court so as to mislead the jury.
Right. Which is done all the time.
All the time, all the
You know?
time. That's why it pays to have the financial resources to hire a persuasive attorney.
Yeah. I mean, or be Karen Reed. Just lawyers throwing their rings into the hat left and right pro bono.
Hats into the ring. I think you said rings into the hat.
Oh yeah, sorry. Thank you.
Although maybe that's what they're doing. I don't know.
I mean, it's basically that. So Free Radical said, Bob and Lauren, I would give you two anything to cover the outrage that is Kensu's case. Have you ever been reached out to from Kensu's family?
100%. And I'm sure you have been too.
I have been. I have
His
been.
wife is a tremendous advocate
She is.
for him. And, actually, he, for a period of time, shared the same attorney who is now representing Christopher Vaughn pro bono. Keith Altman was representing
Yep.
Kensu as well.
Yeah. So yeah, his wife has reached out to me on many occasions, and they've sent me stuff. I'm well aware of the case. I haven't dug into it yet because I've been busy, but I know about it, and from what I know, sounds like the guy's innocent. I mean, that alibi seems pretty bulletproof.
Yeah,
to me,
and I know that he's on Jason Flom's radar as well. And
Yeah.
Jason Flom, everybody will soon meet, but he is one of the founding board members of the Innocence Project. And you know what? I'll tell you this, Free Radical. Spoiler alert, but I think I'm going to make Bob do another podcast with me.
I think we're gonna do a bunch
Allie
of
has
them.
agreed to do it as well.
Yeah, it'll be great. Yeah, this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship. So, all right, will we find out about the other trash can?
Oh, yes, you will. And it's spoiler alert. You will.
And Lisa follows it up with a $5 holla. Thank you very much, Lisa Shelton. Questioning minds must know. What about the second trash dump in the dumpster behind Hawks?
Well,
What about it, Lauren?
no spoilers, but when I said you'll very quickly learn the slick lawyering that transpired in that courtroom to mislead not only the jury, but people who were sitting in the courtroom. And yes, it involves. That was awesome.
Yeah, that was Mandy
That was,
back there playing our sound effects.
that was great.
That's pretty good. All right, so yeah, you guys are gonna have to wait for that. That's coming though. That's
Oh,
coming.
it's coming.
That's coming. Thank you for delightfully chaotic. Appreciate that. So yeah, we want to know about the second trash dump this family vote. So that's coming. It's coming. I think in very short order, right?
Yes, I have to go, I mean, they don't let me leave my house. Everybody like that this is I never leave this room. But yeah, I have to go back and it's coming in episode 8. 8 or 9. You just listened to 9.
I just listened to 9. I don't think it was 9.
Okay, it's 8 then.
I think it's 8. I think it's 8 for sure. So this is
The Hux footage. Fascinating stuff.
yeah,
Fascinating stuff.
pretty interesting. So Lisa, thank you again. Was her defense team a bunch of clowns, or did they do a good job? I mean, they must not have done that great of a job, but from seeing Delphi, I don't know what the judge did.
I love Lisa's questions. Okay. So it is a difficult one to answer. I can tell you that, to quote Mr. Bob Mata, this one slides into the ineffectual counsel lane pretty easily. I think that public defense attorneys are tasked with an impossible hill to climb. And I think that Therese Thien would be the first to tell you that there are things she would have, should have, could have done. She very much knew halfway through the trial that this was heading towards a guilty verdict and an appeal. That said, there are things that we really wish she had caught because I mentioned this in an upcoming episode, but what most people don't understand is that legally, your hands are tied on appeal by issues that were brought up during the trial. You can explain that, Mr. Lawyer.
Yeah, and it's, I mean, that's what's going to be the biggest issue is things that Thien, who was her PD, who was lead counsel PD, just didn't do. Like that's what you concern yourself with, because if you don't perfect an issue for appeal by either raising it via an objection and or filing motions and pretrial hearings where you've got issues that you want raised, that is what perfects an issue for appeal that you could bring up down the road in the event that there's a conviction. That's one of the problems here, and is that there were so many things that weren't done that should have been addressed by the defense, whether it had been during the motion phase or whether it was during trial. There's going to be an issue with getting over that hump of that issue being waived for the purposes of appeal.
Mm-hmm.
But we got all hands on deck with the appellate process, so we're hopeful and we'll see how it shakes out.
And again, you're right. A great question, Lisa. You don't know what the judge did. You're onto something, because there are things that the defense attorney's defense aside, that the judge never should have permitted in the trial. There are things that evidence that should have been admissible, and that is huge going forward. So remember that. And yes, it does involve Hux, and yes, it does involve the alleged second garbage can. So that's coming. Oh boy, is that coming.
Yeah.
But also, spoiler alert, bite mark analysis is junk friggin' science. The hallways of wrongful convictions are, littered with bite mark analysis junk science. It's not something that should be allowed in any trial.
So what do you think
Oh,
about
Darlie, Routier. Yeah.
Darlie?
That is one that I very much has been on my radar probably almost a decade. And
Yeah.
very, very similar to this one. Very, very similar.
Yeah, it is pretty similar in a lot of different ways.
And again, kind of many people believe Tommy Lee Sales, serial killer who broke in and
Yep. Is there anything that legally that can be done or has been done when it comes to how she was treated while pregnant or when she gave birth?
Yes, Crystal, but it is low on the poll in terms of what needs to be tackled next. She does have recourse in Illinois to sue, but none of that means anything to Beverly until she's reunited with her children.
And there could be a civil rights 1983 claim down the road, but those things have to be filed. I mean, you run up against statute of limitations, especially when you're suing a government entity. That could be problematic there. And I fear that ship may have sailed just because of when it took place. So, I mean, but that's yet to be determined. Spoogies, are you guys going to release any of the stuff you'll be discussing, like the interrogations, etc.? Do you want to take that?
That really depends on, if it were up to us, absolutely. But she has a formidable defense attorney now who may see things in a different light. We will be speaking with that formidable defense attorney over the next week, and we will ask to share things. Is it possible to get a video interview, Julie? It's okay with a prison. I like watching how. All right, Meg, that is a great question. You know, I can do a phone interview with Julie, and I have really been weighing. That's one of the things I have to talk to you about, Bob. Again, we need to speak to her lawyer as well, because as you guys know, Julie opted not to testify on her own behalf, which I know makes a lot of people think, well, why not? Why wouldn't she? It is a very dangerous bet. Dana. Dana is, I think, the woman who I have been communicating with on YouTube. That comes up in an upcoming episode, but if you want the short answer, it's because the Carbondale Walmart is a larger Walmart, Dana. Having been to both, I can tell you it is a much better, bigger store, and they still had the Black Friday bins at the Carbondale Walmart. So if you're buying presents for tons of little kids, those Black Friday bins come in pretty handy if you're on a budget.
And it's substantially nicer.
Oh, and it's also, you know, there are tons of other stores. So Old
Yeah.
Navy's right there. It's a huge shopping complex.
Right.
as
Like when you're
opposed
talking
to-
about Carbondale is in comparison to Marion, you're talking about Carbondale is a college town. Southern Illinois University is situated in Carbondale. I'm very familiar with that university in that area. And it's nicer. It's nicer than Marion is in general. And you're not going to have the type of shopping. Like when we drove by it, because we wanted to drive by it specifically to go to that Walmart. Because Dana asked that same question. I'm like, why? Why is she driving down there? You know, when there's a perfectly shitty Walmart right here in Marion. You know, so
Perfectly shitty. That's
perfectly shitty.
That's
And,
the tagline for a new advertising campaign.
Right, it should be. I
Marion
submitted it.
Walmart, perfectly shitty.
So I and we got down there and it was really, really nice. It was a much larger, much nicer looking Walmart. And like Lauren said, it was right in kind of like a large shopping area. So, I think that those were probably, and I think that was the Walmart she went to. Like that was her preference.
And again, no, I mean, I pushed her because if she needed to get something quickly and only had Marion Walmart. But because the Black Friday bins were still at the Carbondale one and it was a bigger store, better stocked, that's where she went.
Yeah. And it's like they opened an Aldi, and when Aldi went like all organic like a couple of years ago, which is owned by Trader Joe's, like the two brothers had a beef or something.
Isn't it
and
like
they opened-
Nikes and Adidas?
Yeah, exactly. So it's the same thing, but so we have one like a stone's throw from where we live. But if I drive to Geneva, they have a much better, nicer Aldi that has been more recently built. So instead of going to the one that would take me 2 minutes to go to get my like veggies and stuff, like I'm driving the extra 17 minutes to go to the one in Geneva just because it's a better Aldi. So it exists in this world. Oh, yeah. Thanks, Mandy.
That was funny, man.
I can write great women's dialogue. I'm like Wally Lamb. You guys ever read Wally Lamb? He writes women so well. All right. So let's see. Delightfully chaotic. That's on the line of planting false evidence, right? Are you talking about prosecutors being crafty with their words? I'm not sure if that's what you're talking about. I mean, I'm guessing that's what you're talking about, delightfully. I mean, here's the thing. There's a remedy to it at trial, and that's that you have to impeach that witness because lawyers aren't putting anything on the stand themselves. They have to do it through a witness. And so if you've got a witness that is throwing out a line of crap, It is on the defense to clarify that. Thien should have absolutely flamethrown that cop that was on there, making it seem as
This
that
is a
it was
spoiler
something that it
alert.
wasn't. Yeah,
This is a
that's all
spoiler
I'm going to
alert.
say. That's all I'm going to say because we
Yeah,
get
there
into
are
it.
many things that it should have been. Now, look, the dumpster pictures, what we have is the video. So we know exactly how Beverly drove up, what she did, and where she drove back off. There was, and again, without giving spoilers, were there dumpsters at Huck? Sure. There are dumpsters at tons of the businesses in the area that would have been much better suited to discarding bloody clothing and evidence. But from the trajectory of Beverly's pull in and leaving, there's no dumpster involved at the Hucks.
Talk about a spoiler. Jeez.
I'm trying.
Queen of spoilers. Spoiling. Just
A new
throwing
title.
spoilers. Good
Queen of
day, sir.
I am the queen of spoilers.
Thank
Thanks
you
a
very
lot.
much. Thank you very much.
Where's
Thank
Allie
you
when I
very much.
need her to hit
Thank
you
you
in?
very much. Thank you
She's-
very
Oh, it's Latka. Okay. So what's really sad is the defendant pays for it emotionally, mentally, and financially when the judge lawyers miss something or let things go on in. And that doesn't sit well with me. It shouldn't. It
No, it
shouldn't.
doesn't sit well with us either, Miss
You
K.
know, and it's a sad reality that it is not that is not the exception. That is the rule.
It is not
Unfortunately,
an even level playing field.
that it is not. That it is not. All right. So we're gonna wrap an hour. You are free. I pardon you to go eat dinner because it is 7 o'clock your time. I'm always like Lauren would love if we bumped this up to 4 o'clock so that I wasn't.
I would not. You keep saying that.
Lauren's really pushing me to
That's
move
not
this.
true. Whatever is convenient for everybody is fine with me. Never
I love it.
once. Never
I love
once
it.
did I
And that's
say
true.
that.
Lauren is always amenable to everything. So, all right, we love you guys. We'll be back next Tuesday. Same bat time, same bat channel. And make sure if you guys haven't already, please, for the love of God, please rate and review wherever you listen to your pods. Give it that 5-star. If you're so inclined and you're enjoying the podcast, no matter which way you're thinking on it, it doesn't matter if you're finding yourself absorbed and you love the story and it creates thoughts in your mind and you're like, wow, I can't wait till the next one. Give us a little review. It really helps us. It means a lot to us, and we'll be very, very grateful to all of you that do that. I saw our Spotify ratings went up, and we got. I think we're up to. I had like 126 on Spotify. I always check. I don't read them like you do because I don't want to torture myself. You get sucked into that thing, and I just can't do it. I'm like, oh my God. When I started reading like people reviewing my Defense Diaries Gacy podcast to rip on me for my Allen stuff, I was like,
I know.
they just
Look,
don't know.
look,
They have no idea.
I get it. I get it. At least, what we should do is I should pick out the meanest reviews that have been left on Apple, and we could read them. And then Mandy could find some sad music to play in the background. I could read yours. You could read mine.
100%. 100%. We should definitely do that. There's no shame in leaning into 1-star reviews that are just completely full of shit. So I actually like that idea. My friend Jay used to like that. He would put up his 1-star reviews of people just saying ridiculous things, and he would embrace them. He leaned into them very, very heavily, and it does make for good content. So there's that as well.
Although I do want to we have had some incredibly beautiful reviews left, and we have gotten several, most of which I think I've shared with you already, but I'll send any ones that we haven't. There is an iHeart address, which is investigatingmurder@iheartmedia.com. And we have had just some really beautifully heartfelt letters expressing their sentiments about the show, particularly episode 5
Yeah.
and
Sure.
the circumstances surrounding her birth.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, our esteemed Lisa Shelton wrote an amazing review. I don't know if you've read it
She
yet.
did. Yes, she did. She did.
did.
She
It
reached
it
out
was
to me as
beautiful. It was
well.
beautiful. Yeah, it was great.
Yeah.
So Bob, this person said they were going to set your car on fire and throw glitter bombs in your yard. Bob, who cares? True. Very true.
Great.
Like my motto is, I don't worry about things I can't control. And like somebody throwing a glitter bomb on my yard, I can't control that. So
What is a glitter bomb? It sounds kind of fabulous.
it does sound pretty fabulous. If I threw a disco ball out in my yard, we'd have a party. That's what I'd do. I would turn lemons into lemonade. That's what I would do with it, and nobody could stop me.
There you go.
We do too. All right, you guys are amazing. We love you so much. Thanks for hanging with us. Make sure you're listening. Episode 7 will be dropping in 2 days.
Mm-hmm.
If you're so inclined, if you're up at Wednesday at 2 a.m, that's when they actually
get
drop,
it. You can get it early.
which is technically Thursday. You guys, we love you. Thanks for hanging. Lauren, I love you. Thank you for hanging.
Right back at you. And
wonderful dinner with your
thanks for
family.
having me. Say hi to
Always.
Allie.
And same to Milo.
Bye.
Ciao, y'all.